The Zaphirian council chamber buzzed with nervous energy as Ambassador Keltar adjusted his ceremonial robes for the third time in as many minutes. His blue-scaled hands trembled slightly as he reviewed the emergency transmission they were about to send across the galaxy. The situation had grown desperate, and their options had dwindled to almost nothing. "Are we certain about this course of action?" asked Counselor Vexana, her silver eyes reflecting the holographic star maps floating above the central table. "Requesting aid from an unknown species is unprecedented." Keltar's throat sacs inflated with a heavy sigh. "The Cronar Empire has already consumed 7 systems in the Outer Rim. Our defense fleets are scattered, our allies have fallen silent, and our people are fleeing in terror. We have no choice but to reach out to anyone who might listen." The Zaphirian civilization had thrived for over 10,000 years, building a peaceful federation of 12 star systems through diplomacy and trade. They were artists, philosophers, and merchants, not warriors. When the Cronar Empire emerged from the galactic void with their massive warships and insatiable hunger for conquest, the Zaphirians found themselves woefully unprepared for war. "The hyperwave transmitter is ready, Ambassador," announced Technician Mordesh from his console. "We're broadcasting on all standard diplomatic frequencies. The message will reach approximately 400 species within the next solar cycle." Keltar nodded grimly. Their hastily composed distress call was simple and direct. "To any civilized species receiving this transmission, the Zaphirian Federation requests immediate military assistance against the Cronar invasion. We offer favorable trade agreements and cultural exchange in return for aid. Please respond if able to provide support." What the Zaphirians didn't know was that their emergency broadcast would reach a small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy, where a species called humans had recently developed hyperwave detection technology. The message arrived at the United Earth Defense Network's monitoring station on Luna at precisely 0347 hours, Greenwich Mean Time. Lieutenant Sarah Chen was nursing her 4th cup of coffee during her overnight shift when the alien transmission lit up her screens like a Christmas tree. She'd been monitoring deep space communications for 3 years without detecting so much as a stray radio signal from beyond the solar system. Now her equipment was practically screaming about an incoming message from somewhere in the Andromeda sector. "Holy hell!" she whispered, her hands flying over the controls to isolate and decode the signal. The universal translation protocols that Earth's xenolinguistics teams had developed worked better than expected. Within minutes, she had a rough translation of the Zaphirian distress call displayed on her monitor. Sarah's training kicked in immediately. She initiated emergency protocols and patched a direct line to Admiral Marcus Webb's personal communicator. The gruff old veteran answered on the second ring, his voice gravelly with sleep. "This better be good, Lieutenant. Do you have any idea what time it is?" "Sir, we've received what appears to be an alien distress call requesting military assistance. The translation is coming through clearly, and the source appears to be approximately 47 light-years from Earth." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Sarah could hear the Admiral moving around, probably reaching for his uniform. "Send me the full transmission data immediately. I'll be in the command center in 20 minutes. And, Lieutenant, not a word of this to anyone until we've had a chance to analyze the situation." Sarah transmitted the data and settled back in her chair, her mind racing. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. The question was about to be answered in the most dramatic way possible. Admiral Webb arrived at the Luna station ahead of schedule, accompanied by a full analysis team including xenolinguistics specialists, tactical experts, and diplomatic advisors. The command center transformed into a hive of activity as experts pored over every detail of the alien transmission. "The mathematical signatures check out," reported Dr. Elizabeth Harper, the lead xenolinguistics expert. "This is definitely an authentic communication from a non-human intelligence." The language patterns suggest a highly advanced civilization with sophisticated diplomatic protocols. Commander James Rodriguez, the tactical analyst, pulled up star charts on the main display. The location they're transmitting from puts them in a region we've designated as Sector 77 Alpha. Our deep space telescopes have detected some unusual energy signatures from that area in recent months, but we assumed they were natural phenomena. Admiral Webb studied the tactical display with the intensity of a man who had spent 40 years defending Earth from potential threats. What do we know about this Cronar empire they mentioned? Nothing directly, Rodriguez admitted. But if their claims are accurate, we're looking at a potentially massive military force capable of conquering multiple star systems. If they succeed in overrunning this Zaphirian Federation, there's no telling where they might turn their attention next. Dr. Harper leaned forward in her chair. Admiral, there's something else to consider. This could be our first opportunity to establish diplomatic relations with an alien civilization. The scientific and cultural implications are staggering. Webb nodded slowly. He understood the magnitude of the decision before him. Humanity had been preparing for this moment ever since they'd developed faster-than-light travel technology 15 years earlier. The United Earth Defense Network maintained a fleet of over 300 warships, ranging from nimble fighters to massive dreadnoughts capable of devastating entire fleets. What's our response time if we decide to intervene? Webb asked. Rodriguez consulted his tactical computer. Using our fastest ships with full hyperdrive capability, we could have an advanced reconnaissance force in their space within 72 hours. A full battle group would take approximately 1 week to deploy. And our current fleet status? We have the entire 3rd Fleet conducting training exercises near Jupiter, the 5th Fleet patrolling the outer system, and the 7th Fleet in ready reserve at Earth. That's roughly 140 ships total, not counting support vessels and logistics craft. Webb felt a familiar weight settling on his shoulders, the burden of command in a moment that would define humanity's future. They could ignore the transmission and maintain their isolation, or they could take the first step into a larger universe filled with unknown dangers and possibilities. Sir? Lieutenant Chen spoke up from her monitoring station. I'm detecting additional transmissions from the same source. It appears they're sending the same distress call repeatedly, with increasing urgency. The Admiral made his decision. Commander Rodriguez, begin immediate preparations for a rapid response deployment. I want the 3rd Fleet ready to jump within 18 hours. Dr. Harper, work with the communications team to prepare a response message. We'll let these Zaphirians know that help is coming. What should we tell them about our capabilities? Dr. Harper asked. Webb's expression was grim but determined. Tell them that humanity has received their call for aid and that we're dispatching immediate assistance. They asked for military support, and that's exactly what they're going to get. As the Luna Station erupted into controlled chaos with preparations for humanity's first interstellar military operation, none of them could have anticipated the Zaphirians' reaction to their response. The peaceful aliens had expected perhaps a single ship or a small patrol group from any species generous enough to answer their plea. They were about to discover that humans had a very different interpretation of the phrase military assistance. 3 hours later, Admiral Webb stood before a holographic conference of Earth's top military and political leaders. President Maria Santos appeared via quantum link from her office in Geneva, while fleet admirals from across the solar system joined the emergency session. The situation is unprecedented, Webb explained to the assembled leaders. We have confirmed alien contact, a request for military aid, and intelligence suggesting a major galactic conflict. Our response will set the tone for humanity's introduction to the wider universe. President Santos leaned back in her chair, the weight of history visible on her face. Admiral, what are you recommending? A full deployment, Madam President. If we're going to make first contact during a military crisis, we need to ensure we're taken seriously. I'm requesting authorization to deploy the entire 3rd and 5th Fleets, 87 ships total, including our newest dreadnoughts. The silence that followed was broken by Admiral Chen Wei of the Pacific Fleet. That's a significant commitment, Marcus. Are we certain these aliens are trustworthy? This could be an elaborate trap. Webb had considered that possibility. It's a risk, but the alternative is potentially worse. If this Cronar Empire is real and as aggressive as described, they represent a threat that could eventually reach our own space. Better to confront them now, alongside allies, than to face them alone later. President Santos nodded slowly. You have authorization, Admiral. But I want constant communication and a full diplomatic team attached to the fleet. We're not just going to war. We're introducing humanity to the galaxy. Back in Zaphirian space, Ambassador Keltar was growing increasingly desperate. The Cronar advance had accelerated, and their latest intelligence suggested the enemy would reach the core systems within days, rather than weeks. He had received automated responses from several species, most expressing sympathy, but declining to provide military assistance due to the distance involved or their own defensive commitments. Then something unexpected happened. Ambassador, Technician Mordesh called out, his voice tight with excitement. We're receiving a response transmission from sector designation. This is odd. The mathematical notation suggests they're from an unmapped region near the galactic rim. Keltar hurried to the communications console. What do they say? Mordesh worked frantically to decode the message, his scaled fingers dancing over the control interface. The translation is coming through now. It reads, Zaphirian Federation. This is Admiral Marcus Webb of the United Earth Defense Network. We have received your distress call and are dispatching immediate military assistance. Estimated arrival time is 6 standard days. Hold your positions. Help is coming. The ambassador felt a surge of hope, tempered by confusion. Earth? I've never heard of this species. Do we have any data on their military capabilities? None, sir. They're not in any of our databases, but... Mordesh paused, his expression puzzled. Sir, I'm detecting massive energy signatures moving through hyperspace toward our position. Whatever they're sending, it's big. Keltar allowed himself a moment of optimism. Perhaps these humans, whoever they were, had a small but effective fleet that could help even the odds against the Cronar. Every ship would count in the coming battle. He had no idea that humanity was about to arrive with the largest military force the Zaphirians had ever seen, turning what they expected to be a desperate last stand into something entirely different. The die was cast, and both species were about to discover that sometimes, when you call for help, you get more than you bargained for. The Cronar, Dreadnought. Flesh Render dominated the void above Zephyr Prime like a mechanical plague. General Thakmore stood on the command bridge, his massive form casting shadows across the tactical displays that showed the systematic destruction of the outer defense stations. His warriors had been bred for conquest, their biomechanical armor fused directly to their nervous systems, making them perfect instruments of war. The pathetic Zaphirians continue to broadcast their distress calls, reported Warsinger Vexka, her cybernetic implants glowing with malicious satisfaction. Several minor species have responded with sympathy messages, but none offer meaningful assistance. Their isolation will be complete within one rotation. Thakmore's mandibles clicked together in what passed for Cronar laughter. As expected, these soft-scaled merchants have no true allies, only trading partners who abandon them the moment real danger appears. Signal the fleet. Begin the final assault on their core worlds. The Cronar Empire had swept across this sector of the galaxy like a cosmic wildfire. Their bioships were grown rather than built, their hulls capable of regenerating damage, and their weapons systems powered by the captured life force of conquered worlds. They had never encountered meaningful resistance from the civilized species they encountered. Today would be different, though they didn't know it yet. Captain Lisa Jang stood on the bridge of the Earth Dreadnought Indomitable, watching the swirl of hyperspace through the main view screen. Around her, The largest human fleet ever assembled was racing toward their destination at maximum speed. 87 warships strong, ranging from nimble destroyers to the massive super dreadnoughts that represented the pinnacle of human engineering. "Captain," called out Lieutenant Commander Sarah Okafor from the communications station. "We're receiving updated intelligence from our advanced scouts. The situation is worse than we thought." Zhang moved to the central command console, her expression grim. "What are we looking at?" The Cronar fleet appears to number approximately 400 vessels, with some ships measuring over 2 kilometers in length. They're using organic technology, bioships that can regenerate damage. Our scouts report they're currently engaging the last Zaphirian defense platforms around their homeworld. Zhang studied the tactical data streaming across her displays. The numbers were intimidating. But she'd seen human ingenuity overcome worse odds during the Mars Rebellion and the asteroid belt conflicts. "Any word from Admiral Webb's diplomatic team?" "They're still trying to establish communication protocols with the Zaphirians. Apparently, their first reaction to seeing our fleet size was something the translators are having trouble with. But it roughly translates to overwhelming gratitude mixed with terror." Zhang couldn't help but smile. Humanity had a reputation for approaching problems with overwhelming force, a tendency that had served them well during their expansion into the solar system. When pirates threatened the Jupiter colonies, Earth didn't send a patrol ship, they sent a battle fleet. When the Mars separatists declared independence, the response wasn't negotiation, it was 3 full fleets and an ultimatum. "Time to arrival?" 18 hours, Captain. The fleet is maintaining formation and all ships report ready for immediate combat operations." Zhang nodded. She'd studied the available intelligence on Cronar tactics during the journey. They relied on overwhelming numbers and regenerating bioships to wear down their enemies through attrition. They'd never faced an opponent that could match their numbers while exceeding their technology. Meanwhile, aboard the lead ship, Terran's Wrath, Admiral Webb was reviewing final battle plans with his senior staff. The massive vessel's war room hummed with activity as tactical computers processed thousands of combat scenarios. "Their bioships present some unique challenges," explained Commander Rodriguez, highlighting key points on the holographic display. "They can repair damage automatically, and their weapons seem to drain energy from whatever they hit. However, they appear vulnerable to kinetic weapons and extreme temperatures." Admiral Webb studied the enemy formation patterns. "What about their command structure?" "Intelligence suggests they operate on a hive mind principle with centralized command. Take out the command ships, and the rest of the fleet should become disorganized." "Recommendations?" Captain Torres of the Decimator leaned forward. "Hit them hard and fast. Use our missile superiority to thin their numbers before they can close to regeneration range. Our new plasma torpedoes should cut through their bio-armor like paper." Webb nodded approvingly. The plan was classic human strategy: identify the enemy's weakness and exploit it with overwhelming force. They'd learned through centuries of warfare that the best defense was often a devastating offense. Back in Zaphirian space, Ambassador Keltar was experiencing what could only be described as controlled panic. The human fleet had dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of their system, and the sensor readings were unlike anything in Zaphirian military records. "How many ships did you say?" he asked Technician Mordesh for the 3rd time. 87 confirmed vessels, sir. The largest appears to be over 4 kilometers in length. Our computers are having trouble categorizing their weapon signatures. The energy readings are off our scales." Counselor Vexana materialized via hologram, her silver eyes wide with amazement. "Ambassador, are we certain these humans are here to help us? This fleet could conquer half the galaxy." Keltar shared her concern. When they'd sent out their distress call, they'd hoped for perhaps a squadron of ships from a friendly species, maybe a dozen vessels at most. Instead, they'd summoned what appeared to be the largest military force their sensors had ever detected. Incoming transmission from the human fleet, Mordesh announced. It's on the standard diplomatic frequency. The main screen shimmered and resolved into the image of a human male in what was clearly a military uniform. His features were stern but not unkind, and his eyes held the confidence of someone accustomed to command. Ambassador Keltar, I am Admiral Marcus Webb of the United Earth Defense Network. We've answered your call for assistance. What's your current tactical situation? Keltar struggled to find his voice. The human's direct manner was both reassuring and intimidating. Admiral Webb, that is, the Zaphirian Federation is grateful beyond measure for your response. The Cronar Empire has overwhelmed our outer defenses and is currently attacking our homeworld. We have perhaps 6 hours before our remaining defenses collapse. Webb's expression hardened. Understood. We're moving to intercept the Cronar fleet immediately. I need you to transmit all available intelligence on their capabilities and current positions. Of course, but Admiral, forgive me for asking, but what are your fleet's capabilities? We want to coordinate our remaining forces effectively. There was a slight pause before Webb responded. Ambassador, I suggest you move your remaining civilian population to secure locations. This is about to become a very active combat zone. The transmission ended, leaving Keltar staring at a blank screen. The human hadn't really answered his question about capabilities, but something in the Admiral's tone suggested that the Cronar Empire was about to face an unpleasant surprise. General Thakmor was basking in the satisfaction of watching Zaphirian defense stations explode when war singer Vexka interrupted his contemplation with urgent reports. General, our long-range sensors are detecting incoming vessels, multiple contacts approaching at high velocity. Thakmor's interest was piqued. More Zaphirian reinforcements? Negative, sir. The energy signatures are unknown. Estimated fleet strength, this can't be correct. Report! Sir, sensors indicate approximately 90 vessels of unknown configuration. The largest ships appear to be significantly more massive than our own dreadnoughts. Thakmor's combat instincts immediately sharpened. In all their conquests, the Cronar had never encountered a fleet that could match their numbers. Most species could field perhaps a dozen warships at most. Signal the fleet to assume defensive formation. We'll see what these newcomers are capable of before we decide how to deal with them. The Cronar bioships began to reposition themselves, their organic hulls pulsing with bioluminescent warning patterns. They had adapted their tactics over countless battles, learning to absorb enemy fire while their regeneration systems repaired damage. It was a strategy that had proven unbeatable against every opponent they'd encountered. But they'd never faced humans before. Captain Zhang watched her tactical display as the human fleet moved into attack formation. The Cronar vessels were impressive in their alien way, massive organic constructs that seemed to breathe and pulse with malevolent life. But she'd studied their combat footage and she understood their primary weakness. All ships, this is indomitable, she broadcast on the fleet command frequency. Execute hammer protocol on my mark. Target the largest vessels first. Our intelligence indicates they're command ships. Across the human fleet, weapon systems came online with lethal efficiency. Missile tubes loaded with plasma-tipped warheads, railguns charged to maximum power, and energy weapons locked onto priority targets. The humans had spent centuries perfecting the art of naval warfare, first on Earth's oceans, and later in the void between planets. Enemy fleet is attempting to communicate, reported Lieutenant Commander Okafor. Standard surrender demands, sir. Zhang's smile was predatory. Signal our response. This is Captain Lisa Zhang of the United Earth Defense Network. You are in violation of Galactic Peace Protocol 77 Alpha. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Of course, there was no Galactic Peace Protocol 77 Alpha. Humans had made it up on the spot, but it sounded official enough to buy them a few extra seconds to complete their targeting solutions. General Thackmore received the human response with confusion and growing anger. Galactic Peace Protocol? These unknown aliens dare to threaten the Cronar Empire? Shall we destroy them, General? Asked Warsinger Vexka eagerly. Signal the fleet to advance. We'll show these newcomers the price of challenging Cronar supremacy. The bioships surged forward, their organic weapons beginning to charge with captured stellar energy. The Cronar had destroyed hundreds of enemy fleets using the same tactics, close to effective range, overwhelm enemy defenses through sheer numbers, then drain their vessels' power while the biohulls regenerated any damage. They were about to learn that human tactics were somewhat different. All ships, Admiral Webb's voice cut across the fleet communications with Arctic precision. Fire. What happened next would be discussed in military academies across the galaxy for generations to come. 87 human warships opened fire simultaneously, unleashing a coordinated barrage that defied everything the Cronar thought they knew about space warfare. Plasma torpedoes streaked across the void at near-light speed, each one carrying enough destructive force to crack a small moon. Railgun projectiles followed microseconds behind, traveling at relativistic velocities that turned simple metal slugs into devastating kinetic weapons. Energy beams lanced through space with surgical precision, targeting command nodes and weapon systems. The result was catastrophic for the Cronar advance fleet. In the first 30 seconds of engagement, 23 bioships simply ceased to exist, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of incoming fire. The organic hulls that had proven so resilient against energy weapons melted under the plasma barrage, while kinetic rounds punched through regenerating armor like it was tissue paper. General Thackmore watched in stunned disbelief as his seemingly invincible fleet was systematically dismantled. How is this possible? Our bioships are supposed to be impervious to conventional weapons. Warsinger Vexka was frantically trying to coordinate a response, but the human attack was unlike anything in their tactical databases. Sir, they're not using conventional weapons. These energy levels are impossible for ships of their size. The human fleet wasn't finished. As the second wave of missiles impacted the Cronar formation, Admiral Webb's voice cut across the tactical frequency with cold precision. This is Admiral Webb to the Cronar fleet. You have one opportunity to withdraw from this system. Refuse, and we will demonstrate why humanity has never lost a war. It was an empty boast. Humanity had lost plenty of wars throughout their history. But the Cronar didn't know that, and the evidence of human firepower was floating in pieces around them. The battle was far from over, but the Cronar Empire was about to discover that they had awakened something far more dangerous than they'd ever encountered before. General Thackmore felt something he had never experienced in 3 decades of conquest: fear. The human fleet's devastating opening salvo had torn through his advance formations like they were made of paper. Bioships that had survived orbital bombardments and stellar flares were dying faster than his tactical computers could process the losses. "Signal emergency retreat to hyperspace," he commanded, his voice cracking with barely controlled panic. "All surviving vessels withdraw immediately!" But Warsinger Vexka shook her cybernetic head, her implants sparking with overloaded data streams. "Impossible, General! They're jamming our hyperspace generators somehow. We're trapped in normal space until we can clear their interference field." Thackmore's mandibles clicked together in rage and desperation. Retreat had always been an option for the Cronar. Their bioships could regenerate damage and return to fight another day. But these humans seemed to understand exactly how to neutralize every Cronar advantage. "Then we fight. Signal the remaining fleet to form defensive clusters. Activate all regeneration protocols and prepare for close-quarters combat." The surviving Cronar vessels began to regroup, their organic hulls pulsing with increased blood flow as their healing systems worked over time. But even as they attempted to reorganize, the humans pressed their attack with ruthless efficiency. Captain Zhang watched the enemy formation changes on her tactical display and immediately recognized the pattern. "They're clustering for mutual defense," she observed to her bridge crew. Classic fleet doctrine when facing superior firepower. "Orders, Captain?" asked her weapons officer. Zhang's smile was predatory. "Switch to pattern Delta. Let's show them what happens when you cluster against human artillery." Across the human fleet, weapon systems recalibrated for area effect bombardment. The ships that had moments before been firing precision strikes now prepared to deliver devastating area denial weapons. Admiral Webb monitored the battle from his flagship's command center, watching as his tactical predictions played out exactly as planned. Humanity's approach to warfare had always been simple in concept and devastating in execution. Identify the enemy's strengths, develop counters for those strengths, then apply overwhelming force to exploit their weaknesses. "Admiral," reported Commander Rodriguez, "Cronar fleet strength is down to approximately 230 vessels. Our losses remain minimal. 3 destroyers with moderate damage, all crews evacuated successfully." Webb nodded approvingly. The humans were fighting their kind of battle: long range, high technology, and overwhelming firepower. The Cronar regeneration systems were impressive, but they couldn't heal faster than human weapons could destroy. "Signal the Zaphirian fleet," he ordered. "Tell them to stay clear of the combat zone. We don't want any friendly fire incidents." Meanwhile, Ambassador Keltar was experiencing something that would require entirely new words in the Zaphirian language. His people had no concept for the kind of systematic destruction they were witnessing. The human fleet was methodically dismantling the Cronar forces with an efficiency that bordered on the artistic. "Ambassador," Technician Mordesh called out, his voice filled with awe, "the humans just destroyed an entire Cronar battle group with a single coordinated salvo. I've never seen anything like it." Keltar's throat sacs inflated nervously. "Remind me to send a very polite thank you message when this is over, and perhaps some extremely generous trade agreements." The Zaphirian defense coordinator, General Nar, appeared via hologram with an expression of stunned disbelief. "Ambassador, our tactical computers are having difficulty processing what we're seeing. These humans fight like mathematical equations given physical form. Every shot calculated, every movement precise. Where did they come from?" "I have no idea," Keltar admitted, "but I'm very grateful they answered our distress call instead of ignoring it." Back in the battle zone, the Cronar were discovering that their traditional tactics were worse than useless against human strategy. General Thakmor watched in horror as his clustered formations became perfect targets for human area effect weapons. "Scatter formation," he commanded desperately. "Prevent them from targeting multiple ships simultaneously." But the humans adapted instantly to the changed tactics. As the Cronar ships spread out, the human fleet shifted to precision targeting mode, picking off isolated vessels with surgical strikes. Every tactical move the Cronar made seemed to play directly into human hands. Captain Torres of the Decimator coordinated the hunter-killer groups with lethal efficiency. "Target the damaged vessels first," she broadcast to her squadron. "Don't let their regeneration systems bring them back to full combat effectiveness." The human tactical doctrine was brutally simple. Wounded enemies were easier to kill than healthy ones, so you finished them off before they could recover. It was a lesson learned through centuries of warfare, from ancient battlefields to the vacuum of space. War singer Vexka frantically tried to establish communication with the human fleet. "Unknown vessels, we request parley. The Cronar Empire is willing to negotiate." The response came from Admiral Webb himself, his voice carrying across the battlefield like a pronouncement of doom. "The time for negotiation ended when you attacked a species under our protection. You have one option remaining: unconditional surrender." General Thakmor's rage overrode his survival instincts. The Cronar Empire had never surrendered to anyone, had never even considered the possibility. "Never! We are Cronar! We do not yield to inferior species!" Admiral Webb's response was immediate and devastating. "Very well. All ships. Execute Protocol Omega. No survivors." What followed was a demonstration of human warfare that would become legend throughout the galaxy. The remaining human fleet concentrated its fire on the largest Cronar vessels, systematically working their way through the enemy formation with methodical precision. There was no wasted ammunition, no unnecessary risks, just cold calculation and overwhelming force. The Cronar bioships, for all their regenerative capabilities and organic weapons, simply could not match human engineering and tactical doctrine. Humanity had spent millennia perfecting the art of killing, first their own species, and then anything else that threatened them. Captain Zhang watched the final Cronar dreadnought explode in a brilliant flash of bioluminescent death and felt a mixture of satisfaction and professional respect. "Signal the fleet, cease fire. Combat operations complete." The sudden silence that followed was almost deafening. Where moments before the void had been filled with weapons fire and exploding ships, now there was only the debris field that marked the end of the Cronar invasion force. "Final casualty report," Admiral Webb requested from his command center. "Cronar fleet completely destroyed," Commander Rodriguez reported with professional satisfaction. 417 enemy vessels confirmed destroyed. Human losses: 3 destroyers with moderate damage, 12 crew members wounded, 0 fatalities. Webb nodded grimly. It had been a good day's work, but he knew the implications extended far beyond this single battle. Humanity had just announced its presence to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. "Open a channel to the Zaphirian leadership," he ordered. Ambassador Keltar's image appeared on the main screen, his scaled features showing a mixture of gratitude and barely controlled terror. "Admiral Webb, the Zaphirian Federation owes you a debt that can never be repaid. You've saved our entire civilization." Webb's expression softened slightly. "Ambassador, we were happy to help, but I think we need to establish some formal diplomatic relations. Humanity is new to this galactic community, and we want to make sure we understand the rules." Keltar's throat sacs fluttered with nervous laughter. "Admiral, after witnessing your fleet's capabilities, I suspect the galaxy will be adjusting to your rules, not the other way around." The next few days passed in a whirlwind of diplomatic activity. The Zaphirian Federation formally welcomed humanity into the galactic community with a celebration that lasted for 3 full planetary rotations. Representatives from dozens of species arrived to establish contact with the newcomers who had destroyed the feared Cronar Empire in a single engagement. Dr. Elizabeth Harper, leading the diplomatic team, found herself in constant demand as species after species requested formal meetings with the human delegation. The universal translation equipment worked overtime as dozens of languages and communication methods were cataloged and analyzed. "Admiral," she reported during their daily briefing, "the response has been overwhelming. Everyone wants to establish trade relations, defensive alliances, cultural exchanges, you name it. Apparently, the Cronar Empire had been threatening this entire sector of the galaxy for decades." Webb reviewed the diplomatic requests with a mixture of satisfaction and concern. "What about territorial disputes? Are we stepping into any existing conflicts?" "Nothing major. The species in this region seem to focus on trade and cultural development rather than territorial expansion. The Cronar were the exception, a military empire that appeared from outside this galactic sector." Captain Zhang, who had been monitoring communications traffic, looked up from her console. "Admiral, we're getting reports that news of the battle is spreading throughout the galaxy faster than we expected. Something about hyperwave communication networks that span thousands of light years." Webb nodded thoughtfully. Humanity's entrance onto the galactic stage had been anything but subtle. Word of their military capabilities would spread to every corner of known space within months. Recommendations? Dr. Harper consulted her notes. I suggest we establish a permanent embassy here with the Zaphirians and begin systematic contact with the other species in this sector. We need to understand the political structure before we make any major commitments. Agreed. What about follow-up military presence? Captain Zhang spoke up. I recommend leaving a squadron here for security and to show good faith to our new allies. The Indomitable and her escort group should be sufficient. Webb made his decision. Very well. Captain Zhang, you'll remain here as our military liaison. Dr. Harper, establish our embassy and begin formal diplomatic procedures. I'll return to Earth with the main fleet to brief the government on our new situation. As the human fleet prepared to depart Zaphirian space, Ambassador Keltar requested one final meeting with Admiral Webb. They met aboard the Terran's Wrath, in the Admiral's private office overlooking the ship's massive hangar bays. Admiral, Keltar began, his scaled hands clasped nervously before him. I must ask you something that has been troubling me since this began. Of course, Ambassador. What's on your mind? When we sent our distress call, we were hoping for perhaps a small patrol squadron or a single ship willing to help. Instead, you sent the largest military force any of us have ever seen. Why? Webb leaned back in his chair, considering his answer carefully. Ambassador, humanity has a simple philosophy when it comes to helping others. If something is worth doing, it's worth doing right. When we received your call for military assistance, we decided to make sure the job got done properly. Keltar's throat sacs inflated with what the Admiral had learned was Zaphirian laughter. Admiral, most species would have sent a few ships and hoped for the best. You sent an armada. The way we see it, Webb explained, sending insufficient force would have been unfair to everyone involved. You needed real help, not a token gesture. The Cronar needed to understand they weren't welcome in this sector, and the galaxy needed to know that humanity takes its commitments seriously. As the human fleet prepared for its journey back to Earth, news of the battle continued to spread throughout the galaxy. The story grew with each retelling, how the peaceful Zaphirians had sent out a simple distress call and accidentally summoned the largest military force in recorded galactic history. Some species began referring to it as the Great Misunderstanding, though none of them were complaining about the results. The Cronar Empire had been eliminated as a threat, and a powerful new ally had emerged to help maintain galactic peace. Humanity, for its part, was beginning to understand that they had stumbled into something much larger than anyone had anticipated. The galaxy was vast, ancient, and full of wonders they had never imagined. It was also apparently filled with potential threats that required the kind of response humans were uniquely qualified to provide. Admiral Webb stood on his flagship's observation deck, watching the stars wheeling past as they traveled through hyperspace toward Earth. Humanity's isolation was over, and their future among the stars was just beginning. Behind them, in Zaphirian space, Captain Zhang was already beginning to establish the protocols that would guide human interaction with their new galactic neighbors. The Zaphirians had asked for help, and they had received exactly what they needed. They just hadn't expected quite so much of it. As Ambassador Keltar would later write in his memoirs, we asked the universe for assistance, and the universe sent us humans. In retrospect, we probably should have been more specific about what we wanted. Fortunately, what we got was exactly what we needed. The galaxy would never be the same again, and for the species lucky enough to call humanity their friends, that was a very good thing indeed.